In the shadows of Mount Everest, a train awaits. But be warned, those attempting to reach the summit must face him.
In the early 2000s at Walt Disney World, their original rides had already covered pretty much everything. We'd already ventured into space, plummeted down a waterfall, encountered pirates, and even visited a haunted hotel and a mansion. Animal Kingdom opened in 1998, but compared to the other three parks, there wasn't a bunch of major attractions. But in 2006, that was about to change. The park was about to get a brand new Expedition, and Disney were about to go bigger, better, and more expensive than ever before. Today, I'm going to be covering the complete history of Expedition Everest. First, let's go back to the start of the park itself. The planning for Disney's new park Animal Kingdom began not too long after MGM Studios, now known as Hollywood Studios, opened in 1989. The idea behind Animal Kingdom was created by Imagineer Joe Rohde, who when presenting the idea to CEO Michael Eisner, brought a 400-pound Bengal tiger into the meeting with him. The park cost an estimated $600 to $800 million. As the different themed areas would be based off real continents, to make sure that the park was identical as possible to these continents, Imagineers travelled to Africa and Asia to study everything from the wildlife to the landscape. The park opened on April 22nd, 1998, and compared to the other three parks, Animal Kingdom didn't focus on the rides. In fact, the only ride at the park was a ride called Dinosaur, which you can still experience today. The park only had one ride because the main focus was on the wildlife and the animal conservation, so it didn't really need any rides or coasters. Although we have seen rides added to the park since opening day, the focus still remains on animal conservation, and in my opinion, this is what makes Animal Kingdom stand out from the other Disney parks. On April 22nd, 2003, after 5 years of operation, the park was finally going to get their first major ride, and they were going to go big. It was announced that a brand new coaster was coming to the park. However, the project was that big that it would take 3 years to construct. For a ride based off Mount Everest, of course this ride had to be huge. In fact, the ride would end up beating the current record holder of tallest ride in Walt Disney World, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. Having said that, the Forbidden Mountain beat the Hollywood Tower Hotel by only half an inch. Expedition Everest towers above Animal Kingdom at 199 feet tall. The tallest drop, however, is roughly 80 feet. You may be thinking why not 200 feet, and that's because the law requires any structure over 200 feet to have a flashing red light or a beacon for planes. Having a mountain with a flashing red light would obviously ruin the theming, so that's why Disney kept it below 200 feet, but only just. Reaching speeds up to 50 miles per hour, Expedition Everest isn't the most intense or fastest ride in the world. In fact, you could probably even class this as a family coaster. However, it is still one of the most intense and fastest rides in Walt Disney World. The Forbidden Mountain isn't just known as the ginormous record breaker for tallest ride at Disney World, it's also the most expensive ride, not just in Disney, but the whole world. Well, that was until Hagrid came along in 2019 and took us all on his motorbike adventure. Expedition Everest cost a very pricey $100 million. Obviously this is a lot of money, but if you see the enormous structure and also experience the ride itself, you'll see why it costs so much. So now we know the history of how the ride came about, let's take an expedition up the Forbidden Mountain and take a run through of the ride itself. The queue itself is phenomenal. It features incredible theming which sets up the story of the mountain. As you go through the queue, you learn about the Yeti and enter a Yeti museum which contains a bunch of information and also artifacts which were bought from a Nepal trip which Imagineers took to obtain research for the ride. As you board the ride vehicle, you then begin your journey through the Himalayas and reach the base of Mount Everest. You climb up a small lift hill which leads to a short drop, and eventually you reach the 118-foot lift hill which takes you up the mountain. As you go up the lift hill, you pass through a temple with drawings of the Yeti. I think at this point you have an idea what may lie ahead. As you reach the top of the lift hill, you curve around the mountain and enter a cave. As you exit the cave, you're met with more track, but someone or something has completely destroyed it. As there's obviously no way forward, the only way is backwards. You then roll backwards down your new route, and oh my is this fun. You enter a helix which makes you feel like you're going upside down. As you spiral through the mountain, you then stop inside a cave. Above, you can see the Yeti in a shadow ripping up some more of the track. This is a good distraction for the track switch which happens right in front of the vehicle. As the Yeti jumps away, you then enter the big 80-foot drop, which is pretty intense for a Disney ride in my opinion. This is my favourite part of a ride because it's just so much fun. You end up going back inside the mountain where you can hear the Yeti roar. You briefly exit the mountain, however you end up back inside where you're greeted by Disco Yeti. Disco Yeti is a very large animatronic, however this animatronic is currently broken, although when it did work when the ride first opened, it was the most advanced audio animatronic built by Walt Disney World Imagineering. Although the Yeti is now broken and doesn't move, the animatronic's beam mode uses a strobe light effect to make it look like it's kind of moving. This has given him the name Disco Yeti, and it has become an icon in the animatronic world. It's been said that the Disco Yeti will be fixed one day, who knows when, but when they do fix him, I really hope they keep it secret so that the first riders on Expedition Everest get the fright of their lives. After you encounter the Yeti, you then reach back into the station. The ride itself is excellent in my opinion. In fact, it's my second favourite ride in the whole of Walt Disney World. But in terms of height and speed, it's nothing crazy. So one of the main questions is, how did the ride end up costing so much? There's a couple things, and one is that it was the first Disney ride to go forwards and backwards. This obviously had to include different track switches, which of course would add to the cost of the ride. However, the main reason why this ride would have cost so much is that the ride is made up of 3 completely different structures: the mountain, the coaster, and the Disco Yeti. The mountain is made up of 1,800 tons of steel and 2,000 gallons of paint, which is equivalent of roughly 20,000 cans of soda. I also need to point out that although this ride is called Expedition Everest, you don't actually venture through Mount Everest. The structure you venture through is referred to as the Forbidden Mountain. Expedition Everest is my second favourite ride in Walt Disney World. It's fun, fast, and has a great backstory. Although broken, the animatronic is still incredible, and the effects used to create the story are simply amazing. After a few more years, a couple more rides were added to Animal Kingdom. However, Expedition Everest is still by far the biggest and, in my opinion, the best. Having said that, there are some pretty phenomenal rides over in Pandora. Although it doesn't officially have a mountain in its title, this ride is still up there with the other 3 mountains in Disney World, and although it's still fairly new, over the years this one will become a classic. So there we have it for this episode of the Walt Disney World History. If you did enjoy it, let me know by hitting that like button, and if you're new to the channel and you're feeling extra cheeky, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single thing, because we make plenty of theme park related videos every single week here on Acadie Adventures, which you don't want to miss. I'll be covering every single ride at Walt Disney World, so make sure to stay tuned for those, and also go back and check out the other videos that I've done previously on the channel where I've covered Splash Mountain, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, Star Tours. We've also got the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, so go check those out. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.